Hello, this is attorney Robert Pascal, and today we are going to be discussing U.S. citizenship and the issue of child support. The reason being is that today a client came into my office and he wanted to talk about his application for U.S. citizenship. He's very well qualified, no problem with the English language, never arrested for a crime, and he met all the guidelines for eligibility but one. And that is that he has failed to maintain his child support obligation. And unfortunately, the failure to maintain either an alimony or a child support obligation will go to the standard of GMC, which is good moral character, which is required to become a U.S. citizen. Now, when you're completing the N-400 application for naturalization, you're going to be asked in parts 10 and 11 specific questions about your marital history and your children. This will be followed up with a question in part 12, 30H, which asks as to whether you have failed to support your dependents or pay alimony. It will be your burden to provide sufficient documentary evidence to the officer at the time of the interview that you have complied with your support obligations, and especially for your children. It does not whether the support has been court ordered or not. So, taking a look at the USCIS Policy Guideline Manual in Chapter 5, under the conditional bars for acts in the statutory period. K, failure to support dependents. And let me go ahead, I'm going to take a minute to read this section to you. An applicant who willfully failed or refused to support his or her dependents during the statutory period cannot establish good moral character unless the applicant establishes extenuating circumstances. The good moral character determination for failure to support dependents includes consideration of whether the applicant has complied with his or her child support obligations abroad in cases where it is relevant. Even if there is no court-ordered child support, the courts have concluded that the parents have a moral and legal obligation to support their minor children, and that a willful failure to provide such support demonstrates that the individual lacks good moral character. So, the manual further details that an applicant who fails to support dependents may lack good moral character if he or she deserts a minor child, fails to pay any support, and then obviously pays an insufficient amount. This section continues with the requirement that the USCIS officer identify the period of non-compliance by the applicant in a review of all court records regarding child support. If the applicant has not stayed current with his support obligations, the officer can consider extenuating circumstances. For example, unemployment, financial inability, the cause of the unemployment, good faith efforts to pay, mistaken belief the support obligation has been satisfied, or a miscalculation of the court-ordered arrears. So it's going to be therefore extremely important to bring copies of all court-ordered support obligations, such as court orders, copies of all payments made either by canceled checks, receipts, or money orders. Now, one of my clients that had recently undergone a USCIS citizenship interview did not have all the documentation with him. He was then presented with this letter, and I'm going to go ahead and just quickly highlight the relevant parts of it for you. Now, for his minor children under the age of 18 and living apart from you, the USCIS has been requesting a copy of the birth certificate of all children under the age of 18. If you are divorced, a copy of the divorce decree along with the marital settlement agreement that has to be either a certified copy, and if it's a foreign divorce, that it must be translated into English, and it has to be a certified translation. In addition, and we had just recently covered this, is to the documentary evidence. Again, canceled checks, copies of money orders, certified records from a governmental depository showing your current balance with arrearage, or proof of garnishment of wages. Receipts or other records substantiating payment to third parties for services provided to your child, including school tuition and medical bills. And then any other documentation or proof that you have in your possession that demonstrates payment of child support. Now, for those of you that do not have any type of court-ordered child support, this letter does specify that in the absence of any court order, that you may submit a notarized statement from the child's custodial parent or guardian. The statement must include the following: his or her home address and telephone number, verification that no order for child support exists, verification of the amount, frequency, the form, and method of provision of the child support with the dates the child support began and ended, and then a copy of the form or picture identification for the parent or guardian, such as the driver's license, government, or employment ID. In addition here, they are also stating that a child's parent or guardian may attend your next interview to provide actual oral evidence. So it's going to be very important that when you go to the citizenship interview, that if you do have children or you do have an alimony obligation, that you do bring the documentation that I've just discussed, and this should alleviate any problems as long as you've been current with your support obligation with the UICS and your ability to obtain your U.S. citizenship. You can take a look at the bottom of my video. I'm going to go ahead and I will put a link to my blog so you can go ahead and you can download the article that I have written on this subject. And I wish you the best of luck.